Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Wilson, singer-songwriter in San Antonio, Texas. I've been writing songs since 1968. This is my 175th CD. I'm doing educational uh, videos now. I have 3,500 songs, and I'm doing education videos. And if people like them, you know, I'll be 70 in October. And I'll pass my information along to people. Thing that took me a lifetime to get it, to figure out. I'll give away free. This one's called Secrets of 1944. U.S. Army Sergeant Chester Wilson, um, in the the Nazi concentration camp in Germany. And yes, he was my dad, my daddy, and let me tell his story. Since I'm the only one left there to say anything, and to my mom, my dad, my brother, my two brothers have all passed away. So it's just my sister and I now. Okay, my dad, Chester W. Wilson, Chester Wayne Wilson. He was born in Norman, Oklahoma, and June 7th, 1919. His mother and his father both passed away by the time he was 9 years old. I'm really not sure how they passed away. His grandfather, who is a Cherokee Indian. My dad's uh, is full-blooded Cherokee Indians. Uh, we actually, my ancestors actually came from Virginia and Tennessee, around there. And I don't know if you're familiar with, in 1830, Andrew Jackson, the president, and with some of his backers and everything, decided that the 160,000 Indians that were living, I believe it was west, work on my history here, west of the Mississippi, those good states, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, to Florida, all that, that was really prime land. And although we had a treaty with the 160,000 Indians, there was really good land, and since the Indians been on there for hundreds of years, the government decided to break the treaty and give all these 160,000 Indians an ultimatum: either we'll pay you a little bit of money and make you move 1,000 miles across the country to land that wasn't as good, or we're going to get the United States Army and force you out. 60,000 left peacefully. My dad, which I'm Cherokee, 100,000 Indians didn't want to give up their home, including the Cherokees, and they brought in army troops and I believe a lot of it was in the wintertime, because they marched them 1,000 miles. It's called the Trail of Tears. 4,000 Cherokee Indians was killed. Starvation, the cold, all different things, and you know, my relatives settled in Oklahoma, which a lot of them did. Okay, so my dad was living with his grandfather. His grandfather was a moonshiner. My dad, at 15 years old, was the during the Depression. My dad was 15 years old. My dad had a hard life. He was smoking at 6 years old. He was driving a truck at 9. I mean, he didn't have a childhood. He loved Christmases because he never had a Christmas. He never had a childhood, and he, at 15 years old, in a 1934 Ford, and he was hauling 100 gallons of moonshine, and a deputy sheriff was chasing him. He's only 15 years old. Don't have a driver's license, and there was a wooden bridge, and his car flew. He hit a bump or something and flew over the bridge, and when it came down, it bent the car, and we kept going, and the deputy sheriff crashed the bridge and got into the water, and I guess the deputy sheriff's okay. My dad decided not to get out of the moonshine business. He was the Bob Wilson Texas Playboys. He was the bass player, although him and I were both musicians, and we never really talked about that very much. My dad drove the bus, and he was the bass player. After Pearl Harbor in 1941, he joined the Army, and he was in El Paso, Fort Blitz, and then he was over there after D-Day. He was with George Patton. When after D-Day, George Patton came to France, and he was a sergeant, and he was captured by the Nazis, and he was sent to a Nazi concentration camp 50 miles from Berlin. He was about 25 years old. Uh, my dad had 4 children, and I was the baby, the spoiled one, and the closest to him. He'd tell me stories he never told anybody else, and he never talked about the war very much. He told me he said whenever the Americans had sent 1,200 bombers to Berlin, he could hear them bombing Berlin, which was 50 miles away from where he was at. He always told me he was a fall guy. I don't know if it's true or not. That he would break out. He would help break out some some of the POWs, and he was caught like 12 times, but I'm not sure on that story. But when he was actually got out, actually when the Americans sent, I don't know if you know your history, Americans sent 1,200 heavy bombers because this is what happened when the war was ending. The war was ending. The English said the capture of Berlin, where my dad was near there, the capture of Berlin would need to be done by the Americans, but the Americans said they'd still have to defeat the German army still in the field. Let me give you all a history lesson right here. The younger kids, you have no idea. Germany had 22 million troops. They had 150 of some of the best submarines in the world. In fact, they come all the way to the United States. They were sinking oil boats and things on the shore of the United States. They had the largest, or one of the largest, if not the largest battleship in the world, the battleship Bismarck. Yeah, when the Bismarck was against the battleship from the Hood, who was English, the Bismarck was launching 2,000-pound radar-guided shells and sunk the Hood in 11 minutes. It took 40 ships to get the Bismarck down, but it was this story's gonna get long because there's so much to it. You know how they got the Bismarck down? These airplanes the English had, they were obsolete in World War II. I think they were twin-engine planes. They were only 95 miles an hour, which is unheard of. And they carried one thing, and the Germans couldn't hit them because their guns were so advanced. They thought they'd bring heavy stuff against them, and the plane was going too slow. So when the torpedoes hit the mechanism, and the ship was paralyzed, they couldn't move. It took 40 ships to sink the Bismarck, and actually, the Germans helped when they were surrounded, and the Germans couldn't be helped, and the other Germans couldn't help them. They opened up all the things and sunk their own ship. Now, you historians remember, I'm 69 years old, and this is from memories from 25 years ago of stuff I've heard. The Hood had, I believe, 1,700 men on it, and very few survived. The Bismarck had 1,900, and very few survived. And there was 40 boats around there. They could have rescued. Out of 1,900 men on there, they could have rescued a lot, but what I understand, they were so angry of all the ones that passed away on the Hood, battleship Hood, that they left them to drown. So that's the way it goes. So my dad was in the concentration camp. The Russians got him out. A Russian woman with a burp gun, a machine gun, got him out. He was 95 pounds. He had his hands and feet frozen. He had a scar on his head where a German officer hit him with the butt of a gun. Okay, when he came back, he didn't want nothing to do with the army. They wanted to give him a promotion and stay in the army. after lots of concentration camp. He didn't want nothing to it. So he in Oklahoma. They, in fact, I still I have all the records and everything when was still around. Uh, in Oklahoma, his relatives, all it has on there was missing in action, the date in 1944, missing in action in France, and they thought he died. He come one night drunk, drunk. He go over there and he shocked everybody, and he know he didn't want to stay in San Antonio. I mean, he didn't want to stay in Oklahoma, so he jumped on a Greyhound bus and came to San Antonio, and became a butcher, a butcher, and a very kind-hearted guy. So my mom is pure Czechoslovakian. My dad was married 3 times. My mom was my dad's last. Actually, his son Chester Wayne Jr. was from his second marriage, and after my parents got married, his other son came to live with us. Okay, and my mom actually had a daughter, so my dad my dad adopted the daughter, the son, and then there was 2 sons. My brother and I were from with our families. Okay, so my mom was from Schulenburg, Texas. She she didn't like it there, and she jumped on a Greyhound bus and came to San Antonio, and she went to this meat packing plant, and this is 1947, after the war. She went over there and tried to look for a job. Didn't know we were going to hire her. They went, and okay, come back the next time, we wouldn't hire her. Third day, my dad came out. My dad was a supervisor. My dad was the most kind-hearted person in the world, same as me, and gullible, lending people money, stupid like me. Okay, so my dad came up on the third day, and my mom wanted a job, and my dad said, "Okay, you're hired," just like that. And says, "Well, you need a uniform." So I don't have a uniform. I don't have any money. My mom said, my dad pulled out $20, which is a lot, in 1947, and gave it to her. Here's a uniform. So they started getting together, and then in those days, it's frowned for people to live together. Back in those days, so they had a secret. They were together and everything. They finally got married. They didn't have a car or anything. They lived in a rent place. The little place they rented is still there. I drove via city bus for 30 years, and I drive by there where they used to live. So what they did was there was this new area that they were building houses. They didn't have a car, so they had to walk. It's like 3 or 4 miles. My mom built she bought the 2 worst lots in that subdivision that was coming up. It used to be a Belgium Gardens. It used to be farming land. Believe me, you believe me. And so my mom saved $650, which was a lot of money in those days. And she paid for the two lots, which was the worst in the neighborhood. They were rocky, everything else. And my dad built the original house in 1948, small house, and they remodeled in 1957. My stepbrother and my stepsister, they there, and then my brother was born, and then I was born. I was the last. I was born, and the home, and like today they have reverse mortgage and all that baloney. That the only way all that's to get your house. We're old school. We passed the family home to me. My 2 brothers passed away. My brother Wayne, my stepbrother, passed away at 13 years old. My brother passed away at 46 years old. My dad passed away at 73 years old. My mom passed away at 92 years old, and I took care of my mom in the nursing home for 6 years, and I inherited my mom's home. I have everything. Everything's there except the people. Call it old-fashioned, call it living in the past, but I didn't move no couch. I didn't move no bed. Now, my mom's spirits is there, and it scared the hell out of me before. After my mom's funeral, 2 weeks after my mom's funeral, I was in the house, and all the windows are closed, and the bedroom doors are opening and closing by itself. I took a picture and I saw a vapor. I said, do not scare me. Do not scare me. So they didn't do that no more. But every once in a while you hear in their bedroom, you hear noises like 2 or 3 in the morning. Or in the morning you're rattling the pots of pans because my mom, she lived there 62 years. They moved there when she was 27, and she went to the nursing home at 85. 62 years. They had the same phone number for 62 years. My dad, one of the best guy in the world. He didn't get nothing for being in the army. I mean, he had a Purple Heart. I lost the Purple Heart. I don't know where the Purple Heart's at. He he bought funeral plots for everybody. He's not buried at Fort Sam or one of those national things. He had formal. I own his car too. I have the home and the car, and the car. He had former POW plates, and when my dad passed away, I went over there and they said, "Well, they told me at the license things as well. You want former POW plates? You have to pay extra money for that." Says, my dad's a POW in World War II. He was with the United States Army. Well, we don't care. You want special plates, you got to pay more money. So I said, I'm not going to pay more money. So my dad's plates are up on the wall. My dad was a deer hunter, and all his deer heads and everything is still up there, and his former POW plates are up there. My dad was one of the best fathers you could ever had. Hunting, fishing. I was the baby. He was a diesel truck driver for 38 years. The same company. You can't find that. And he'd call me, and I would get everything ready for him. I'd get everything ready, get his car loaded and everything for him to go. I was the only. He was on a deer lease from 1959 to 1972, 1,200-acre deer lease, and kids weren't allowed in those days. But me at 9 years old, because I was a pretty good kid, and 9 years old, I was the only kid I was a cabin boy. In fact, I managed 2 hunting ranches. Now I'm still the cabin boy. I don't like shooting animals, but I like looking at them. But I'd carry a .25 automatic at 9 years old. I grew up around guns all my life. It was great with all those guys bringing these big deers and these huge rattlesnakes, 6-foot rattlesnakes. One time, we had an old World War II Army base, barracks over there, and an electric generator, and it was great. A kid growing up. I was there when I was 9, 10, 11, 12. So I got to about 14, I thought I was a punk, and I regret those. I regret the last few years of my dad's life. I wasn't closer because I was a punk. I was hanging out with my friends. My dad did one of the worst mistakes you could do. He gave me, as I was his favorite, at 15 years old, he gave me his car, a 56 Ford Fairlane. Well, drinking, missing 56 days of school, blowing the motor, messing up the brakes. He never forgave me. But he bought me 3 more cars after that. And his 4th car he bought me, he called me irresponsible. I bought it in 1969. It's a 1957 Ford Fairlane. It had 42,000 miles on it for $250. And guess what? My dad passed away in 93. God rest his soul. But the car he called me irresponsible is in my backyard. We can do a little bit of work on it. Still runs. Original motor. Fisherman. My dad was a fisherman. It was just I took my dad's death really hard. Really hard. It's ironic because he passed away in the same hospital that I was born. And I was actually driving a city bus. I was driving the trolley, which goes around downtown San Antonio. And they called me and said, well, your dad just passed away. So they relieved me and went over there. I took my dad's death really hard. He was 73. My mom was a nurse home 6 years, but I watched my mom suffer. My sister was handling my mom's money and conned her out of $50,000, forged checks in her name, and I took over. In 2010, I took over all my mom's finances. And I never been in the hospital in my life. I still have never been in the hospital in my life. And I had to handle doctors and Medicare and Medicaid. I had to fill out forms. And I did all that. And I was really lucky I got to keep the house because when in 2010, before she went to the hospital, our family attorney, he's 93 now. I don't know if if he passed away or not. I haven't talked to him lately. But he came. My mom went from the hospital. It's getting worse and worse and worse. And so she was at a rehab place, and we had to take her to a nursing home. Well, she's at a rehab place. I called my called my attorney, and he came. And they don't do that anymore. They came and they had a witness, and he did a stack of papers for my mom, putting me power of attorney and all that stuff while she was still, she could do it because she had dementia. Well, she was still able to do that, and there's a stack of papers, and I didn't know. Thank God, my attorney. He in a stack of papers, my mom signed where it put both our names into my mom's house. And if not, the state of Texas would have took my mom's house and sold it because it was $667,000 in Medicare, Medicaid, Medicaid. $167,000. I didn't want to sell my mom's house, but my attorney stepped in and had to write 2 letters and show proof to him that it was in our names. All I can say is love your mom and your dad. I'm proud. My brother was in Vietnam. I was never in the service. I was married at the time, and I was going to school. I was never in the service. My brother was in Vietnam. He was wounded. He was wounded. He was on the helicopters, and he was on the helicopters in Vietnam, where they would pick up the wounded, and he was hit by shrapnel, and when he got out of Vietnam, he didn't want nothing to do with the army either. He wanted nothing to do with the army. But my brother and I were pretty close. They used to get us mixed up, and I've looked at family pictures, and I couldn't tell us apart either. Kenny, he's Kenneth, and I'm Bobby, but they call me Kenny and Bobby. In the years back in the 1950s, they said, "Are you Kenny or you Bobby?" I said, "I'm Bobby." And but my brother took up for me. I'll tell you a story real fast. I've never been a fighter. I'm a little different. I got picked on a lot, and we were in junior high school, and my brother, both of them went to the same school, and the bully started putting his shoe on me or something. I told my brother, hey, he's putting his shoe on me. He says, "Hey, you stupid. You want to put your shoe on somebody? Do it to me." My brother picked him up. Boom, 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 boom. My brother was mean. My brother didn't take nothing from nobody, man. But my brother, his downfall was he smoked. He smoked a pack a day, and he would not go to the doctor. And I don't smoke. I don't do anything. And he died in his sleep at 46 years old. And my sister tells me that it was a that he had appendicitis or something, and he didn't get it taken care of, and he died in his sleep. It was really sad. Me, I'm gonna live a long life. I'm shooting for 100. I mean, I do videos on 70 years old. I'll be 70 in October. About looking young for 70. I use lotions and creams, and never been to the hospital. Well, that's about it. Love your parents, no matter how your parents were to you. If you had a good relationship or not, you only have one parent. My dad is my guardian angel. I've been very, very lucky. I've been in about 12 accidents, car and pickups and motorcycle accidents, and I was never hurt. That's amazing. I drove a city. I drove a taxi for 6 years, daytime. I was a chicken. Daytime, was never robbed. Almost one time, but I talked him out of it. I drove a city bus in San Antonio for 30 years. 29 years old, I wasn't afraid of nothing. 69, I ain't going there no more. But I worked 14 years at night and was never hurt or anything. I worked security for 3 years. One year at night with no gun. And I've been pretty lucky. I'm gonna do. I do these educational videos. I've done 3,500 songs already, but it's my 175th CD. And I said, well, I got my love songs and this and that. I have such a great memory. and things that interest me: Bigfoot, Loch Ness monster, UFOs, reincarnation, guardian angels, and the things in history that. And I try to find information I have, and I put these little videos for the world. Well, this is Bob Wilson, Bob Wilson Nation. Peace out.